Hey you, let's get personal. Girl Defined is an online ministry created by two girls to help other girls find their Christian identity and purpose in life. Why is this relevant to today's topic, you may ask? Well, back when I was actively religious, I took some religious teachings very akin to Girl Defines to heart, and I could say that they warped my perspective of morality and reality, respectively. I found a single blog post that sums up this type of fundamentalist thinking and made me come out as more anxious, confused, and moralistic under the notion of purity. Alright, let's begin. Trusting God with your guy crush. Have you ever been there? Have you ever had a crush on a guy but you weren't even sure if he knew you existed? Crushes are simple and totally complicated at the same time. Yeah, I agree. On one hand, it should be easy to deal with. If he asks you on a date, he likes you back. If he doesn't, move on and consider their options, but it just doesn't work that way. You're right, it doesn't work that way. And you know what? It doesn't always have to work that way. I think that sometimes a girl has to be the one to make the first move. You see, half my friend group is guys, and I learned from them that the reason they're not going to make a move on a girl first, at least not always, is because they're terrified of girls. And being terrified of girls doesn't make you any less of a man or human. It's a condition that doesn't discriminate between the sexes. Hell, I'm terrified of girls. Who would have thunk? Why are you crushing on this guy? Seriously, ask yourself, what do you find so attractive about this particular guy? Is it his character? Do you have a friendship with him? If your crush is based on his looks alone, I would strongly recommend taking your thoughts captive and not allowing yourself to fantasize about this guy. Does anybody else see the problem here? Let me start by telling you a personal anecdote. There was a handsome boy from my church, and I fell head over heels in love with him. And I liked him for several reasons, but I assumed mainly because he looked really, really handsome. But here's the catch. He was deemed the bad boy. And I thought to myself, why? Why should I, the good Christian little girl, why should I fall in love with this guy? I thought I was morally in the wrong just because I had feelings for that guy. So, Girl Defined, I did exactly what you told me to do. I took my thoughts captive. I prayed super hard every time I came to church. I even confessed to the priest about my guy problems. So embarrassing. I tried everything I could, pretty much, to not fantasize about this guy. Do you understand what an impossible task you're setting your readers up for, Girl Defined? Yes, you can limit your fantasies depending on how good your concentration skills are, I guess, but why would you even want to do that? Because telling people to block out their thoughts on the precedence of sin makes for a clear-cut case of intrusive thoughts and neurosis, and I'm a clear testimony of that. Basically, your advice would requisite that people shut down their entire bodies, their minds, their feelings. That's repression in its finest form, denying the existence of a very, very ingrained human trait. Second, falling in love with people, even if it's just for their looks, isn't wrong, if that's what you're implying. Handsomeness is an evolutionary trait, and sometimes we need to fall in love with handsome people to see if they match up in other areas of their life. Personally, I find that a win. I think you're talking about handsomeness as though it was a totally separate thing from a human being. Now granted, sometimes attractiveness doesn't match up to a person's inner qualities, and sometimes it's warranted for us to have the freedom to find that out firsthand about said person. However, handsomeness does tend to come with a lot of factors. My example, the handsome boy that I mentioned earlier. Back to my main point. I did exactly what Girl Defined would have prescribed for me to do. Trying to take my thoughts captive. Let's just say that it resulted in some pretty bad anxiety problems. Yeah, I don't miss my teenage years. Also, the nature of this question, why are you crushing on this guy? That's like asking me, why did I have a crush on Christina and the Queens? Cringe. Wait, no. Shut up. Don't tell me you didn't go through a phase yourself, Buster. Sometimes love is predictable. Other times you just end up liking a Christine or a Chris or yeah, whatever you call yourself these days, chum. And you know what? That's okay. It can be so easy to take our initial attraction and interest in a guy to a much deeper level. If we're not careful, attraction can easily turn into hours of dreaming about a future with this guy. The dreaming can quickly turn into sexual fantasy, and before we know it, we're on the honeymoon. The only problem is it's all in the mind. If you're in this place, I encourage you to repent and ask God to create in you a pure heart. Huh? Fantasy is natural? Now, of course, I might play devil's advocate and be like, yeah, not everything is natural is good. Okay, but isn't the purpose of fantasy to motivate you to make a move on a guy, to get to know somebody and see if they jive with ya. But of course there's no mention of girls being straightforward with their crushes, so why am I saying this? And I'm not saying all fantasy is good. For instance, to give a mild example, it can consume you and your mental health can plummet. And I'm just saying this from personal experience, but isn't the purpose of fantasy, like in moderation, to help you get to know yourself better, your preferences, your limits, your type? I encourage you to find a strategy to center your mind on something more God-honoring. Okay, I find it really rich that something as innocent as crushes had to turn into a sin issue, no less a gauge that measures purity. Remember, I tried that. I tried very hard to think about something God-honoring in replacement of my crush. And guess what? It worked. I stopped thinking about boys completely. I'm into girls now. Yep. Thanks, religion. Was that your goal? Was it? Meditate on Psalm 51:10, because crush is bad.
Imagine my shock.
Find ways to occupy your mind and redirect your thoughts towards something more Christ-centered and pure. Well, yeah, you can occupy your mind if your crush becomes overwhelming, but I don't know what this has to do with purity. Just so we're clear, I'm not saying act on your feelings necessarily. I'm saying that physical attraction in itself isn't something that should be squelched out of your system. It should be acknowledged, and if you're someone who's ready to go steady with someone in a monogamous relationship, I think we can agree that those fantasies are just another way to process desire. If this guy is generally interested, I can guarantee that he will eventually speak up. No. Okay, so if you're into manly man type of guys who do all the initiative, that's your prerogative, but chances are the average guy doesn't want to look too clingy himself. He needs a little initiation from you too, sweetie tums. Something you gotta know about guys too. They tend to flirt with several girls at once because they want to expand their dating pool so that they can be assured that their target is generally interested in them and that they haven't invested into just one girl all for nothing. You know how we girls are. Sometimes we play hard to get, we're interested in one day, and then we ignore all your texts the next. Using your life to serve God is one of the best solutions to dealing with or getting over a crush. Don't believe me? Try it for yourself. Oh, believe me, I tried, and this is the reason I turned out the way I am today, I guess. As for the rest of their content, you'll find that a lot of it is surprisingly similar to that one example I showed you. But I think this one specific article summed up everything you should know about a certain religious fundamentalism, which I'm not a particularly big fan of, as you probably know by now. I'm sorry. I'm really tired. I have not slept all night. Alright, please don't send girl-defined any hate or vitriol their way. I don't want to think that any of my viewers would be so baseless as to resort to ad hominem attacks instead of critiquing the ideas. But if I can relate my personal story to anyone who has suffered from the same religious neurosis as I have, then consider my work done.